She left through the service door at 6:40 in the morning, so no one would know she'd slept there. Madison Carter is a Black woman, senior executive assistant to the Soryun Group. Her ivory clothes hang in the same closet as his black suits, but inside the tower, she is only the assistant. The man is Seo Tae-jun, president of Soryun. They call him the Quiet One. A dragon tattoo climbs the left side of his neck, up behind his ear. He never raises his voice. He doesn't have to. For 3 months, she loved him behind closed doors. Then, on the 40th floor, he saw her laugh with another man. A hand touched her elbow. Something in his face went cold. In front of 10 employees, he called her, just an employee who forgets her place. She didn't cry. She looked him in the eye. I remember exactly what my place is. That afternoon, a handwritten resignation letter landed on his desk. He tore it up. He told her she couldn't leave. She told him her exit wasn't on the paper. It was in her. But what neither of them knew was already moving in the shadows of that tower. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Madison Carter found her shoes by touch, in the dark, the way she had learned to over 3 months. She carried them in one hand until she reached the bottom of the stairs. The marble was cold under her feet. She waited there, at the edge of the service hallway, and listened. 6:40. The house made its small sounds. A boiler somewhere below. The hum of a refrigerator the size of a wardrobe. No footsteps. No voice. She slipped the shoes on. The service door was heavy, and it had a trick to it. You lifted the handle a half inch before you turned it, or it groaned. She had ruined a morning learning that. Now her hand knew the lift without being told. The door opened on oiled hinges and let in the gray light of the alley, and she stepped through it into the part of her life nobody was allowed to see. She pulled the door shut, lifted, turned, released. Silence. The envelope dress fit her like it had been sewn onto her body, marfim cream against deep brown skin, and she smoothed it once at the hip out of habit. The caramel bag hung from her shoulder. The thin gold watch sat where it always sat. From the alley, she looked like a woman who had arrived, not one who had spent the night. That was the point. She walked 200 meters down the service lane before she let herself breathe. At the corner, a black delivery van idled. The driver didn't look at her. Nobody in this district looked at anybody. That was why Seo Tae-jun lived here. The neighborhood was built to not see. Her car was parked 3 blocks off, always 3 blocks, never in front. She got in and set the bag on the passenger seat and gripped the wheel with both hands and left the engine off. Her reflection watched her from the rearview mirror. Calm eyes, steady mouth, a face she had built to survive rooms full of men who counted her as furniture. She remembered the first night. It hadn't been planned. Either of them would have sworn that. A negotiation that ran past midnight. A merger that would have swallowed a smaller firm whole. And Tae-jun standing at the window afterward with his tie loose and something cracked open in his face that no one in that building had ever been allowed to see. She had stayed to finish the filing. He had said her name once, quietly, as if testing whether it would break. She had crossed the room. That was 3 months and 100 service door mornings ago. What she remembered most was not the kiss. It was what he said after. No one can know. 3 words, spoken to the ceiling. And she had been too full of him to hear them for what they were. A verdict. She heard them now, every morning, in the click of that heavy door behind her. She thought about the closet. Upstairs, behind a door she had helped choose, her clothes hung beside his. Her creams and marfims and soft grays against his black suits, row on row of black, charcoal and jet and coal, a wall of dark wool. Someone opening that closet would see a marriage, her sleeve touching his, her scarf looped over his hanger. Nobody opened that closet but the two of them. At the office, she was the assistant, senior executive assistant to the president of the Sirion Group, and a very good one, and that was the whole of what anyone was permitted to know. She had earned the title in daylight, in front of witnesses, over 4 years. The other thing, the closet, the service door, the shoes carried down the stairs, that had no title. It lived in the dark and left before dawn. She started the car. The parking garage under the Sirion Tower took her ID badge and lifted the gate. She rode up in the executive elevator alone, the mirrored one, the one that showed her a woman in cream from 4 angles at once. The floors ticked past. 19, 22, 26. Her phone buzzed against her palm. She almost didn't look. She had a rule about looking at her phone in this elevator, because the camera in the upper corner fed to a security desk, and a face could give away more than a mouth. But the name on the screen stopped her. Mom. Her mother had been dead 11 months. The message was one Madison had saved and never deleted, forwarded to herself so many times it had lost its date. She had set it to resurface. She knew that. She had built the little reminder herself, months ago, on a night she couldn't sleep, and still, seeing it climb onto the screen at 6:52 in a mirrored box, rising through a building that belonged to the man whose bed she had left an hour ago, it landed like a hand on her shoulder. He loved me behind closed doors. Never once in the light. Don't ever accept that, baby. A love you have to hide is a love that has already decided what you're worth. Madison read it twice. The elevator slowed. 38. She stood very still and watched the number and felt something old and patient turn over inside her, the way a key turns. She had accepted it. That was the truth she carried up the tower every morning. She had told herself the arrangement was temporary, that Taejun needed time, that a man who ran what he ran couldn't simply announce a Black American assistant as the woman he loved. Not with the Han family circling, not with the board, not with the whole architecture of his world, built on him being untouchable and alone. She had told herself she understood. She was so tired of understanding. The doors opened on 40 and she stepped out into the glass corridor, and the day started, and it did not stop for her. Jiwoo was already at the desk outside the president's office, headset on, 3 lines blinking. She rose half out of her chair when she saw Madison. The Daegu numbers came in overnight. He asked for them printed, not emailed. And Director Choi is here early. How early? He was here when I arrived. Jiwoo dropped her voice. He's in the small conference room, alone. Madison filed that. Choi Myung-ho did not arrive early. Choi Myung-ho arrived precisely, the way a clock arrives at the hour, and being early was a kind of statement she did not yet know how to read. She set her bag in the drawer she kept locked, and pulled the Daegu report, and squared the pages against the desk. Is he in yet? She asked, meaning Taejun. Not yet. Carr said 15 minutes. 15 minutes. He would have left the house through the front, in the second car, 40 minutes after she left through the back. They arrived at the same building by separate roads. It had a rhythm to it now, a choreography she could have danced blindfolded, and this morning, the rhythm made her jaw tighten. She carried the Daegu report to his office and set it on the blotter, corners aligned, the way he liked. His desk was bare, except for a pen and a single photograph turned face down. She had never turned it over. She wanted to, every day, and never had, because turning it over would mean she was the kind of woman who went through his things in the dark, and she had decided a long time ago exactly which kinds of woman she would let herself be. She straightened and looked at the room, floor-to-ceiling glass. the city spread below like something he owned. On the credenza, a row of awards with his name and none with hers, though half the words in those citations were sentences she had drafted at 2 in the morning. Today, she thought, not as a wish, as a decision, arriving the way the message had arrived, on its own schedule, fully formed. Today she would tell him, not another performance of patience, an ultimatum, clean and quiet, the only kind she knew how to give. Choose. Bring me into the light or let me go, but stop keeping me in the closet with your black suits like something you'll deal with later. She smoothed the report one last time and left the office before the wanting to stay could reach her feet. Director Choi was waiting by her desk when she came back. He stood the way he always stood, straight as his own fountain pen, gray suit buttoned, the silver frames catching the corridor light. His smile arrived before his words, thin and unhurried. "Miss Carter, you look well." "Director Choi, you're early." "Am I?" He said it as if the concept amused him. "At my age, the mornings come faster. You have the Daegu figures?" On his desk? Good, good. He didn't move to go. His small eyes traveled once over her, not the way men's eyes usually traveled, but colder. An accountant counting. "You've been with us. 4 years now? 4 years in the spring. Remarkable. And such trust the president places in you." A pause that lasted exactly 1 beat too long. The access alone. Contracts, correspondence, the family accounts. He must sleep very soundly, knowing his house is in such careful hands. Madison held his gaze and gave him nothing. "I do my job, Director. You do it beautifully." He inclined his head, and the silver frames flashed, and he walked away toward the elevators with the unhurried step of a man who had said precisely what he'd come to say, and no more. She stood at her desk with her heart doing something it had no business doing. His house is in such careful hands. It was a compliment. It was built like a compliment, hung like a compliment, and it had left a splinter in her she couldn't find with her fingers. She sat. She pulled up the day's calendar. She made herself breathe against the count of 4, the way her mother had taught her before spelling bees. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and by the 3rd round her hands were steady on the keys again. The morning ran. It always ran. 2 calls from Singapore, a courier with documents she had to sign for and log, a junior manager who cried in the stairwell over a mistake Madison fixed in 9 minutes and told no one about. She moved through it all in cream and gold, calm on the surface, and underneath the decision sat waiting like a stone in a river, and the water of the day ran over it and did not move it. At 10, she took a call from the president's mother's household in Busan. The old woman never spoke to Madison directly. She spoke through her, past her, a voice on the line asking whether her son was eating, whether he was sleeping, whether there was anyone at all in that cold house to see that he did. Madison wrote the answers she was permitted to write. Yes, yes, he is well cared for. She set the phone down and sat with the irony of it for a moment, the woman in the closet reassuring the mother that the man was not alone. A designer from the 11th floor stopped by with mock-ups for the annual report and lingered, the way people lingered near Madison, because her calm was a thing they wanted to stand inside. "You always know what he'll approve," the young man said, half admiring, half something else. "It's like you're in his head." Madison smiled and said nothing, and moved the top mock-up 2 millimeters to the left, and knew he would approve that one, and hated a little how well she knew it. At 10:40, she went down to the 4th floor archive alone. She told herself it was for the Daegu cross-references. It was, partly. But her hands, once she was in front of the terminal, typed something else. She pulled the access log. Her own credentials, the last 30 days. She didn't know what she was looking for. She was a woman who had been handed a splinter and couldn't stop pressing the skin around it. Her log was clean, every entry hers, every timestamp matching a task she remembered. She scrolled anyway, and the ordinary rows of her own careful work scrolled by, and there was nothing, until a single entry, 3 weeks back, her badge, her credential number, 2:17 in the morning, a folder she had never opened in her life. Han, preliminary. 2:17 in the morning, 3 weeks ago, she had been asleep in a bed that officially did not exist, in a house with a service door, beside a man who kept her in a closet. She stared at the row for a long time. She tried the folder. Han, preliminary. Her credential opened it now, in daylight, and the screen filled with a directory of subfiles, dates, initials, and at the top a header line that meant nothing to her yet and would mean everything soon. A proposed union between houses, framed in the dry language of contracts. She didn't have time to read it. Footsteps sounded on the archive stairs, unhurried even, a clock arriving at the hour. She closed the folder before the door opened. A file clerk nodded at her and went to the far shelves. Madison's pulse was loud in her own ears. Someone had opened that folder at 2:17 in the morning wearing her name, and now her name opened it in the light, and both of those facts sat in her chest like swallowed stones. Then she cleared the search, exactly the way she had come, and rode the elevator back up to 40, with her face rebuilt and the stone in the river a little heavier than it had been. She did not know yet what the folder was. She only knew that somewhere in this building, someone had walked around wearing her name. Ji-woo looked up when she returned. "He's in. He asked for you." Madison set her hand flat on the desk to feel something solid. Today, the word was still there, and now it had company. The log, the folder, the old man's cold, small smile, the message from a mother who had loved in the dark and warned her only child never to settle for it. "Tell him I'll be 1 minute," she said. She went to the ladies' room, which was empty, and stood at the mirror and looked at the woman there. Cream envelope dress, deep brown skin, luminous under the bad light, long dark hair parted clean down the middle, waves framing a face that had learned to give away nothing. She looked at her and thought, "You are going to walk in there and stop asking." She said it under her breath, once, the way her mother used to name a thing, to make it real. "Today." The word fogged a small circle on the glass. She thought of the closet again, her sleeves against his black wool, and how a stranger, opening it, would read a marriage that the daylight had never once confirmed. She thought of the badge with her name that had walked the building at 2:17 in the morning. She thought of Choi Myung-ho counting her with his cold, small eyes and calling it a compliment. Somewhere under all of it was the same shape her mother had warned her about, a love that had already decided what she was worth and filed the decision away where no one would find it. She would find it. She was tired of being the only one kept in the dark about her own life. Her phone buzzed. She looked, out of the old reflex. It was him. 2 words, the way he always texted, spare as his desk. "Come up." She turned the phone face down on the marble, the way his photograph lay face down on his blotter, and let herself feel, for exactly 1 breath, how much she wanted the thing she had come to demand. Not the ending, but the beginning of it. The door of that closet opening into a room with light in it. Then she straightened her spine, and she went to him. His office door was already open 2 inches when she reached it. Madison pushed it the rest of the way with the flat of her hand and stepped inside. Taejun stood at the window with his back to her, the Daegu report open on the desk where she'd left it. He didn't turn. "Close it," he said. She closed it. The latch clicked. For 3 months that click had meant one thing in this building. A document. A decision. a name that couldn't leave the room. She waited for him to face her. "The Singapore numbers," he said. "You moved the call to Thursday. You had Busan on the line at 10. I gave you the afternoon back." He turned then. His eyes went over her once, the way they went over a contract before he signed it, and something in her chest pulled tight because she knew that look, and she knew it was not the look he gave her in the dark. Here she was, the schedule. Here she was, the hand that moved his hours. She had the words ready. "Today you choose." She had rehearsed them in the mirror at 6:52 and again at 10:40, with the Han folder glowing on the screen. She opened her mouth. His phone buzzed on the desk. He looked at it. Whatever was on the screen changed his jaw. "Later," he said. "I have the floor at 11. And the moment closed like the door had. She left the words where they were. She would carry them to lunch, she told herself. She would carry them to the elevator if she had to, but she would not swallow them a fourth day. The hallway on the 40th floor was a corridor of glass. On one side, the offices. On the other, a 200-foot wall of window with the city laid out gray beneath it. People crossed it all day like fish in a lit tank. Madison crossed it now, with the Singapore file under her arm, heels even on the stone, and at the far end, Daniel Choi was waving her down with a tablet in his hand. "Tell me I'm wrong," he said before she reached him. "Tell me the Daegu units shipped short and someone rounded up. You're not wrong. I hate that you said that." He turned the tablet so she could see the column, his sleeve pushed back off his smartwatch. Someone rounded up 12,000 units into a forecast the board already saw. If I'm the one who catches it at the meeting, I'm the guy who makes the CFO look asleep. If I'm not the one who catches it, you're the guy who let it through. Right, so. He grinned, helpless. "Save me." She almost laughed. It came up out of nowhere. The first easy thing in a day made of careful things, and it broke across her face before she could decide whether to allow it. Daniel Choi was 33 and looked younger, and had a way of making a spreadsheet sound like a hostage negotiation. He was the only person in the building who spoke to her as if the answer she gave would decide something. "Print the reconciliation," she said. "The one I sent you Friday, bottom of the second page." "There's a second page?" "There's always a second page, Daniel." He put his hand on her elbow. It was nothing. It was the reflex of a man steering himself back from a joke, 3 fingers at the bend of her arm, gone in a second. But she laughed for real now, low, and he laughed with her, and the two of them stood in the middle of the glass corridor, lit up for the whole floor to see. At the other end of the corridor, Tae-jun stopped walking. She didn't see him yet. Daniel didn't see him. But the floor saw him, and the floor went quiet the way water goes flat, and it was the quiet that made her turn. He was 40 feet away. His hand was at his side. He was looking at the place where Daniel's fingers had been, though the fingers were already gone, and his face had nothing on it at all, which she had learned in 3 months was the most dangerous thing his face could do. "Mr. CO," Daniel said, and straightened, and dropped his hand as if the elbow had burned it. Tae-jun came down the corridor. He didn't hurry. Behind him, the conference room doors were open, and the 11 o'clock was seated. The deputy directors, the 2 board observers, the Han liaison in his gray suit, taking a glass of water from a tray. 10 people, maybe more, turned in their chairs to watch the president walk his own hallway. He stopped in front of her, close, closer than a president stood to an assistant. "The Singapore file," he said. She held it out. He didn't take it. "You had it Thursday," he said. "You moved my call to Thursday. Now I have a room full of men who flew in for numbers you rearranged, and I find you here." His eyes went to Daniel and came back, laughing. The word landed wrong on purpose. She felt the corridor lean in. "The Daegu forecast is short 12,000 units," she said. Even. Quiet. I was telling Mr. Choi where the reconciliation is, so it doesn't reach your board wrong. That's the file in your hand at 11 o'clock. That's why I'm here. It was the truth, and it was a good truth, and for 1 second she saw it reach him. A flick, a crack. The man who at midnight 3 months ago had said her name at a window. Then the Han liaison in the conference room set down his glass with a small deliberate click, and the flick was gone. And what came into Taejun's face instead was the thing the whole building would talk about by 2. You forget yourself, he said. Louder than he needed to be, loud enough to carry to the water tray. You are an assistant. He said it the way you'd read a line item. You keep my calendar. You do not stand in my hallway putting your hands on my officers and laughing like this is a place where that is done. You are a woman this company pays to be useful, and today you are neither useful nor invisible, which is the only other thing I require of you. Someone in the conference room looked at their own shoes. You have confused your access for a position, he went on. It is not a position. It is a set of keys. Keys can be taken back. The last inch of the corridor emptied of sound. Daniel had gone the color of the window. A deputy director found something urgent on his phone. The Han liaison watched with the mild interest of a man watching a demonstration he had paid for. Madison did not move for a moment. She was aware of her own pulse in her throat. One hard beat, then a second, then it settled. Settled the way it had settled 100 mornings on the service stairs, when the trick was to lift the latch a half-inch and make no sound at all. She had spent 3 months making no sound. She was tired of the half-inch. She did not cry. She was aware that the room was braced for it, that the liaison's eyes had dropped to the corner of her mouth to catch it, and she gave them nothing to catch. She set the Singapore file down on the low table beside her, squared it to the edge with 2 fingers, and looked up at the man she had woken beside 4 hours ago. I know exactly where I stand, she said. Quiet. It went to the back of the room anyway. The reconciliation is at the bottom of page 2. Your board will need it in. She glanced at the thin gold watch on her wrist. 6 minutes. Mr. Choi has it. You should go in. Daniel took half a step forward. Mr. Seo, that's not... She was covering for a mistake that's mine. If anyone here... Sit down, Mr. Choi, Taejun said, without looking at him. Before you cost yourself more than she just cost herself. Daniel's mouth closed. His jaw worked once. He looked at Madison, and there was something in the look, an apology, a warning, she couldn't read which, and then he stepped back against the glass and said nothing more. And she understood that in this building, a man could want to help you and still measure the price of it in the same breath. She held Taejun's eyes 1 beat longer than an assistant would have dared. Then she turned, unhurried, and walked back the way she'd come, down the whole length of the glass with the city gray on her right and 10 men behind her, and she did not look at one of them, and her heels were even the entire way. The conference doors closed behind her at 11 o'clock exactly. She made it to the stairwell before her hand started to shake, and even then she waited until the fire door sealed and she was alone in the concrete throat of the building before she let it. One hand, then both. She pressed them flat against the cold rail until they stopped. Above her, a fluorescent tube ticked. Somewhere below, a courier's cart rattled across a landing and was gone. A love you have to hide is a love that has already decided what you're worth. Her mother's voice, or the voice she'd given her mother, typed out and scheduled and sent to arrive at 6:52 this morning, like a bill coming due. She had spent all day looking for the moment to hand him the ultimatum, and he had stood in his own hallway and handed her the answer before she could ask the question. Keys can be taken back. Not a woman, a ring of keys. She thought of the closet in the house on the hill, her pale things beside his black ones, 4 hours ago, close enough to touch. A stranger would read a marriage. She had let herself read it too, some mornings, before the service door. She saw now what the closet actually was. A room no one opened, a marriage no one was allowed to witness, which made it no marriage at all. He would keep her the way he kept that closet, full and shut. She didn't cry in the stairwell either. She was surprised by that. She had thought, on the way down, that the stairwell was where it would come. Instead, what came was clarity, cold and total, the kind that arrives after the fever breaks. He would never say it in the light. He had just proven he could not. He would love her behind a closed door and unmake her in front of an open one, and he would do it every time the wrong man set down a glass of water, because somewhere in him it had been decided long ago that a thing you cannot hide is a thing that can be used against you. She had known this in her body for 3 months. Now she had heard it in his mouth. She climbed back up one flight and let herself onto 40 through the far door, the one by the copy room, so she would not have to cross the glass again. Ji-woo was at her desk, with her eyes very wide and very fixed on her screen, the way you look busy when you have heard everything. "Ms. Carter, It's fine, Ji-woo. He didn't mean. He meant it." She said it gently, so the girl would not carry it. "It's all right. Pull me a sheet of the good letterhead, would you? The heavy cream. And leave it on my desk." Ji-woo's hands went still on the keyboard. The cream is for. I know what it's for." She sat at her own desk, the one outside his, the one with the locked drawer where her caramel bag waited. She did not open the bag. She took the sheet of heavy cream paper Ji-woo laid at her elbow, and she took the pen from the cup, not his pen, hers, the plain black one, and she uncapped it and held the nib above the page and did not write anything for a full minute. Below her, the city went about being gray. Around her, the floor pretended to work. In the conference room 40 feet away, a president was reading. At this exact moment, the reconciliation on the bottom of page 2, the numbers she had caught for him, in his hands because she had put them there. She thought about the 4 years, the contracts she had drafted and watched go out under his signature, the awards on his shelf with his name where hers should have been, half of them for work she had built line by line at this desk after dark. The mother in Busan who called to ask, through Madison, whether her son ate, whether he slept, whether anyone was taking care of him, and never once knew that the woman on the other end of the phone was the answer. She had made herself indispensable and invisible in the same motion, and today he had told her, in front of witnesses, that only one of those was a job. She began to write. She wrote it by hand, because a resignation typed into the system would route through HR, and Choi Myung-ho's office would see it stamped before Taejun did, and she was done with things about her life reaching other people before they reached her. She wrote it in her own hand, the letters even, the same steadiness she'd kept in the corridor, and it took 4 lines. She did not explain, she did not accuse, she did not write the word. Keys. Though it sat under every sentence like a watermark, she wrote that she was resigning her position as senior executive assistant to the president, effective immediately, and she thanked the company for 4 years, and she signed her full name, Madison Carter, the way you sign a thing you mean. She read it twice. She folded it once, cream against cream, and she did not put it in an envelope, because an envelope was a thing you could set on a desk and leave unopened, foolishly, forever. Ji-woo was pretending to type. 2 designers had drifted up from 11 on some invented errand and were pretending to consult a binder near the elevators, close enough to see. The floor knew the good cream paper. The floor had done this math before. Madison stood. She smoothed the front of the cream envelope dress with one hand, the small automatic gesture of a woman who has decided something and will not be talked out of it, and she picked up the folded letter, and she looked at the closed conference doors where the 11 o'clock still ran. She would not slide it under. She would not leave it with Jiwoo. She would put it in his hand, in front of the room if the room was still there. In the light he refused to let her stand in, and she would let them all watch her hand it to him, the way they had watched him take her apart. The conference doors opened at 11:40. The board observers came out first, then the deputies, then the Han liaison, buttoning his gray jacket, his eyes finding her across the floor, and holding a moment too long before he moved to the elevators. Taejun came last. He had the Singapore file under his arm. He was already turning toward his office, toward her desk, toward the space where she stood, and when he saw the folded cream paper in her hand, he stopped the way he had stopped at the end of the corridor. For the first time all day, something moved in his face that he did not choose. Madison crossed the floor to meet him. The whole 40th floor watched her do it, and this time she let them, because that was the point. She stopped in front of him, close, closer than an assistant stood to a president, and she held the letter up between them. "You said the keys can be taken back," she said, quiet, level. "It reached the elevators anyway. You don't have to take them." She pressed the folded letter into his hand and closed his fingers over it, with both of hers, the way you close a child's hand around something it is not ready to hold. "I'm giving them to you," she said, and she let go. The folded letter stayed in his closed hand for a full minute after she was gone. Taejun walked back into his office and shut the door with his heel. The floor outside had already resumed its noise. Phones, the copy machine, someone laughing too loud to prove they had not heard anything. He did not turn on the second light. He crossed to the window where the Daegu report still sat and set the Singapore file down beside it. Then he opened his hand. 4 lines. Her handwriting slanted the way it always did on creamstock, the letters leaning forward like they were trying to leave the page ahead of the reader. Effective immediately. Thank you for 4 years. Madison Carter. He read it once. His jaw worked. He tore it in half. The 2 pieces did not fall the way paper falls in films. They dropped fast, edge over edge, and landed on the marble near his Oxford. He looked at them, then he crouched, gathered both halves, and set them on the desk. He pressed the torn edge together with one thumb as if the seam would take. It did not take. He stood there with his back to the door and his hand flat on the ruined letter, and for a moment, the president of Syrian Group did nothing that a board would recognize as decision. His breath moved. The emugi at his collar rose and fell with it. On the wall, the awards with his name caught the window light, and he did not look at them. The intercom buzzed. Jiwoo's voice. Careful. "Sir, Director Choi is asking whether you'll take the 2 o'clock. "No," he said. "And Mr. Park from Singapore?" "No." A pause. "Sir, Ms. Carter's badge is still in the drawer at her desk. Should I leave it?" He let go of the button before she could answer. He picked up the 2 halves of the letter, folded them together once along her original crease, and slid them into the inside pocket of his jacket, the pocket over his chest, the one with the button. Then he opened the door. Madison had not left the building. She was at her own desk, the locked drawer open, the caramel bag on her knees. She was not packing in the way people pack when they are running. She was doing it the way she did everything. The stapler back in its slot, the 2 pens squared, the folder of Busan correspondence set aside in a separate stack because it was his mother's, and his mother had done nothing. Her hands were steady now, she had made them be. He stopped at the edge of her desk. The floor thinned around them. People found reasons to be elsewhere. "Come into the office," he said. "I don't work here anymore." "Then come in as whatever you are." She looked up at that. It was the closest thing to an admission he had offered in 3 months, and he had offered it in front of a copy machine. She set the Busan folder down. She stood, smoothed the front of the cream dress with one pass of her palm, and walked ahead of him, and everyone who pretended not to watch her go, watched her go. He shut the door again. For a moment neither of them filled the room. He went to the desk. She stayed by the window, which was hers now to look at, because she had nothing left to keep her eyes down for. He took the two halves out of his pocket and laid them on the glass between them, edge to edge, so she would see he had torn it, and see he had kept it. "You can't leave," he said. "That's not up to the paper." She nodded at the pieces. "You can tear that 100 times. My leaving isn't on the page, Tae-jun. It's in me. I already did it. This morning, in the elevator." She let the name sit in the room. She had never once said it inside this building. "It's done. I'm just the last one to catch up to it." His hand flattened over the halves. "I said things on the floor Don't." Her voice did not rise. "Don't unsay them here, where only I can hear it. That's the whole problem, and you just did it again." He was quiet. "You said I confused access for a position," she went on. "You were right. I did. For 3 months, I let a set of keys feel like a place at a table. That's on me. I fixed it. I gave the keys back." She picked up her own 2 fingers and pressed them flat to her sternum, once, the way he had pressed the letter. "This doesn't come back with keys. What do you want?" Not a question. He had run out of the shape of questions. "I know exactly what I want." "That's not the hard part." She turned from the window. "You know it too. You've known since the first night you said 3 words to me with your back turned. You want me where you can reach me, and nowhere anyone can see me reach. You want the closet." She said it plainly. No heat, full and shut. Something crossed his face. He had never heard her name it, and hearing it named took something out of him at the knees that he did not let reach his stance. "That's not a life," she said. "That's storage." He came around the desk. He stopped an arm's length short, because he had learned this room's distances and he had learned hers, and the two did not agree anymore. "You think I don't want to put your name on the door," he said, low. "You think it's shame." "I don't think it's shame." "Then what?" "I think it's a lesson somebody taught you." She held his eyes. "I don't know who, but somebody taught you that if you love a thing in the light, they take it. So you love in the dark, where it's safe, and you call the dark safety, and you call the woman in it lucky." His hand closed slowly on the edge of the desk. A muscle moved along his jaw. Whatever she had touched it by accident, and she watched the accident register, watched him decide not to tell her she was right. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said. "Then teach me." She waited. She gave him the whole silence to fill. "No? That's the closet again. You'd rather I guess wrong forever than say one true thing where I can use it." He did not answer, which was the loudest thing he could have done. Outside the door, closer than either of them wanted, the elevators opened and closed. The building went on selling the appearance of an ordinary afternoon. "Here's what you don't understand about the light," Madison said. She took one step, closing half the distance he had left. "It's not a favor you'd be doing me. It's the only version of this where I get to keep myself. In the dark, I'm your secret. In the light, I'm a person who chose you back. You don't get the second one for free. You have to be seen, choosing it. And if I can't, then you already answered me. On the floor, in front of 10 people." She held out her open hand, palm up, empty. "You gave me my answer for free too. I'm just the only one who understood what it cost." He looked at the empty hand. He did not take it. He could not take it and keep everything else he was holding, and he had spent 35 years learning never to set anything down. "There's a name in the Han file," he said instead. It came out of him sideways, the way a man changes the subject when the subject has beaten him. "You saw it, 3 weeks ago, 2:17 in the morning." The room changed temperature. Madison did not move her hand. She let it drop, slowly, to her side. I saw an entry with my credentials, on a folder I never opened, at an hour I was asleep in your house. She watched him. I've been carrying that since 7 this morning. I thought it was mine to be ashamed of. You want to tell me why you brought it up now, or you want me to keep guessing? For the first time all day he looked away from her first. There's a proposal, he said. The Han house wants adjoining. Old style. 2 names becoming one on paper, with a marriage in the middle of it to make the market believe it. Daesung has been pushing it for a year. I rejected it in writing in the spring. It should be dead. It isn't dead. No. His hand went to the torn letter on the glass and stayed there, an anchor. This morning the liaison put a glass down at the wrong moment and I heard the whole room hear it. They're telling people it's alive. They're telling people there'll be an announcement. There's a name attached to the joining now that wasn't attached in the spring. Madison already knew it. She had known it since the glass clicked and he had turned to stone in a corridor over a man's 3 fingers on her elbow. She made him say it anyway. Han Soo-yeon, he said. The name landed and did not shatter anything, because Madison did not let it. But her chin lifted a 1/4 inch, the way it did when she took a hit, and decided in the same second not to show the bruise. So while you were reducing me to keys in front of the whole floor, she said, there's a woman with a surname you can merge, and a wedding somebody's already whispering about, and you let me stand out there, thinking I was the one who forgot her place. She almost laughed. It did not reach her mouth. You have a strange way of choosing, Taejun. You do it by never choosing, and letting the rest of us find out where we landed. I have not chosen her. You haven't chosen me either. That's the point. That's been the point since 6:40 this morning. She picked up her bag from where she'd set it by the leg of the desk. You've got a proposal you say is dead, that keeps breathing. You've got a board that watched you cut me in half to prove you're not soft. And you've got a countdown running that you didn't start and can't stop, because the only thing that stops a rumor like that is you standing somewhere public and saying the true thing out loud. And you don't do the true thing out loud. You do it with your back to the window. She moved toward the door. Madison. She stopped. He had used her name. In this office, in the light, with the door shut, but the walls thin, he had used it, and it had cost him something to do it, and they both knew the walls did not count as the light. If you walk out of the building, he said, I can't protect you from what's coming. She turned, and here, finally, something in her went hot. Not loud, but hot, the way a wire goes hot before it decides whether to hold. Protect me. She said the 2 words back to him like she was turning a coin to see the other face. That's the closet talking. That's the whole disease in one word. You think being kept is being protected. You think if you fold me up small enough and put me somewhere dark, nothing can reach me. She shook her head once. The only thing I've needed protection from in 4 years is the way you say that word. That's not fair. No, she agreed. It isn't. Almost nothing about this is. She put her hand on the door. But I'll tell you what's fair, because you keep asking me what I want, like it's a maze. It's simple. I don't come back for less than the light. I don't come back to a house where my clothes hang next to yours and my name hangs nowhere. I don't come back until you've stood somewhere with people watching and said a true sentence about me and let it cost you. She opened the door 2 inches, enough for the corridor's air to reach in. You're the president of Sejong Group. You built an empire so nobody could take anything from you again. Fine, keep it. But you can't keep the empire and me both in the dark. One of us has to come out, and I already did. You're asking me to choose between what I built and... I'm not asking you to choose anything. She said it gently, which was worse. I'm telling you, you already have to. I'm just not going to stand in the closet while you pretend you don't." She stepped through the door. The floor had emptied to a pretense of work. Jiwoo half rose from her desk, and Madison put a hand out. "I'm fine, don't," and Jiwoo sank back down with her mouth pressed thin. At the far end of the corridor, near the elevators, a figure in charcoal gray stood turning a fountain pen over in his fingers, watching the office door, and when Madison's eyes found him, he inclined his head a fraction, courteous, and stepped into the waiting car before she could read his face. The doors closed on him. She did not know yet what she had just seen. She only knew the mal-taste of it, the same one she had swallowed that morning at her own desk, and she filed it where she filed the 217 entry, and the glass, and the wedding, that kept refusing to be a rumor. Behind her, Taejun stood in the doorway of his own office and did not follow. He watched her cross the length of the glass. He watched her not look back. He had the halves of her letter in his chest pocket, and a proposal in a folder that would not die, and a name, Han Soo-yeon, that the market had already started to marry him to, and he understood, standing there, that she had drawn the line in the only place he could not stand on both sides of. He could keep the empire. He could keep her. He had built his whole life on the belief that keeping was the same as loving, and she had walked out of the building carrying the proof that it wasn't, in a caramel bag, past 10 people who would tell the story wrong by nightfall. The elevator took her down. He watched the floor numbers fall, 40, 39, 38, the way a man watches something he chose not to catch. On his desk, beside the Daegu report and the Singapore file, the Han folder sat where it had sat all morning, and inside it, 3 weeks deep, was an access entry at 2:17 in the morning, wearing her name, and neither of them knew yet whose hand had really opened it. But somebody did, and somewhere below the 40th floor, that somebody had just watched the last thing standing between two empires walk out the front door alone, and had counted it as one obstacle fewer. Taejun turned back into the office. He took the 2 halves of the letter out of his pocket and set them on the glass again, edge to edge, and looked at the seam that would not hold. Then he reached for the phone, and he stopped, because he did not yet know which number would let him keep both, and the not knowing was the answer, and he was, for once, the last one in the room to understand it. The clock on the wall read 1 minute past 2. The floor Madison had left behind was already rewriting her, desk by desk, into a woman who had reached above her station, and 40 floors down, the doors opened, and she stepped out into the lobby's hard light and did not stop walking. Madison did not go home. She walked 4 blocks, then 5, until the glass towers thinned and a small public library rose on the corner, the kind of building nobody watched. She went in. She found a terminal in the back, behind the periodicals, and she sat down with the card she still carried in her wallet. Not her badge, that was in the drawer, but the remote credential she used to log the Syrian archive from the road. She had built that access herself, in year 2, when Taejun needed contracts read at airports. It had never been revoked. He had forgotten it existed. So had everyone. She logged in. The screen loaded slow. A librarian pushed a cart past the aisle, and Madison turned the monitor a quarter turn toward the wall. Old habit. She typed the folder name from memory. Han, preliminary. The directory opened, the same tree she had glimpsed 3 weeks late, and closed on the stairs. This time no footsteps came. She read from the bottom up. That was the trick with contracts. The recent files lied. The old ones told the truth. The oldest document in the folder was dated in spring. A single scanned page, a letter on Syrian letterhead, and at the bottom of it, in ink, a signature she had watched sign 1,000 things. Taejun's. Above the signature, 4 lines of formal Korean legal language, and one English clause the lawyers had inserted for the foreign board members to read. She read the English clause twice. The proposed union between the two houses is declined. This office will not entertain a merger of assets under the frame of marriage. Consider the matter closed. Declined, in writing, in spring. The thing he had told her in the office was true, but she had needed to see it with her own eyes, because a man who hides one thing hides more, and she had learned not to take even his confessions on faith. He had killed the merger months ago, and yet the folder above that letter kept growing. File after file, stamped after the spring, each one newer than the death of the thing it described. You do not build a folder around a corpse, unless someone wants the corpse walking. She opened the file directly above the letter, a memo. No signature block, only initials at the foot. Small, gray, the kind of mark a man makes when he wants deniability. The memo did not argue for the merger. It arranged for the appearance of one. It listed press contacts. It listed a suggested date for an announcement. It listed, under a heading she had to read 3 times, a name to be attached to the Union for the Market's Comfort. Han Soo-yeon. Madison sat very still. The merger was dead, but someone inside the building was keeping its ghost warm, dressing it, walking it past the windows so the whole floor, so the whole market, would believe a wedding was coming. And a wedding meant a merger, and a merger meant 2 houses becoming one. And in every merger she had ever read, one house ate the other. She printed nothing. She wrote 2 words on the back of a deposit slip from her wallet, folded it once, and put it in the zippered pocket. Then she cleared the search, logged out, and wiped the history the way she had wiped it on the 4th floor, twice, because once was for the machine and twice was for herself. She was reaching for her bag when a shadow fell across the periodicals. "You read faster than the lawyers," a voice said. Female, soft, Korean accented English, precise. Madison turned without hurrying. A woman stood at the mouth of the aisle, pale oval face, black hair to the shoulders with a side-swept fringe, a marine blue suit that cost more than the library's annual budget, pearls at the throat, small ones. A leather bag held in both hands like a shield. Madison had never met her. She knew the face from a board dossier she had filed herself. "Miss Han," she said. "You know me." Han. Soo-yeon's eyes moved once to the dark monitor, then back. "Then you know I did not follow you here to marry your president." She sat down in the next chair without being asked. She set the bag on her knees. Up close she was younger than her clothes, 29 and tired in a way 29 should not be. Her hands were steady. Her voice was not, quite. "I have been trying to reach someone who actually reads," Soo-yeon said. "Not the men who nod. You are the one who reads." "How did you find me?" "There is a car 3 blocks from Mr. Seo's house that moves every morning at 6:40. Soo-yeon said it without cruelty, as a fact she was handing over. "I have people who watch the same house I watch. When you left the building today and did not go to that car, I thought, there, that is a woman who has finally stopped pretending. So I came." Madison kept her face flat. Inside, something dropped to floor. If Soo-yeon's people had watched the house, then the secret had never been a secret. It had only been unspoken. "You've been watching him," Madison said. "I have been watching my father." Soo-yeon's mouth tightened on the word. "There is a difference, and it is the whole difference." She opened the leather bag. She did not pull out a weapon or a bribe. She pulled out paper, a thin sheaf, folded lengthwise, the way you fold a thing you have carried a long time. She laid it on the table between them, but kept 2 fingers on it. "You found the letter," she said. "The one your Mr. Seo signed in spring. Declined. Closed. Yes?" Madison said nothing, which was its own answer. "Good. then you already know the marriage is dead. What you do not know is who keeps digging it up. Suyeon slid the sheaf an inch toward her. My father does. Han Dae-sung. He does not want a wedding. He has never wanted a wedding. A wedding is a story he tells the board, so that when the two houses' shares sit side by side, nobody asks why. He wants the merger your president killed, and he has found a way to take it without a signature. There is no merger without a signature, Madison said. I've read the bylaws. Both boards vote. Siryeon's board answers to Taejun. Boards vote on what they are shown. Suyeon's finger tapped the paper once. And they are being shown that Siryeon is unstable. A president who cannot control his own house. Rumors of a marriage he denies, then a marriage he seems to allow. Numbers that arrive wrong to the board and get corrected too late. She watched Madison's face. Daegu, 12,000 units, yes? Short, then found at the bottom of page 2. Someone made sure the wrong number reached the board first, and the right one reached it second. Twice now. It makes your president look like a man whose own reports betray him. Madison's hands went cold. The Daegu forecast. Daniel, in the glass corridor, laughing, 3 fingers on her elbow, the number that was short and then wasn't. She had thought it a junior's mistake. It had been placed. Who? Madison said. Who moves the numbers? Who keeps the folder warm? Suyeon shook her head slowly. That is what I do not have. That is why I am sitting in a library, talking to my father's supposed rival's assistant. A thin, exhausted smile. My father works through someone inside your house. He calls the man the friend. I have heard him on the phone say it. The friend has it arranged. The friend says the woman is gone now. That is one less door. She stopped. Her eyes flicked to Madison and stayed. The woman, that is you. Yesterday you were a door. Today you resigned. My father was told it was one less obstacle. The library was very quiet. Somewhere, a book cartwheel squeaked and stopped. Madison heard the words come back to her from 3 floors and a full day away. The figure in gray by the elevators, the pen turning, the polite tilt of the head. Someone counted my leaving as a win. She had felt it and not known why. Now she knew there had been a mouth to say it into a phone. The friend, Madison repeated. An old man, I think. Someone Mr. Seo trusts. My father only trusts men he has owned a long time. Suyeon lifted her 2 fingers off the paper at last and pushed the sheaf all the way across. These are wire records, from my father's side. Payments out of a shell in Macau, 3 of them, spring and summer. I copied them from my father's own study because I am done being the face on his war. The account they go to is masked. I could not open it. But you, she nodded at the dark monitor. You have the other half, the house they land in. If you match his half to your half, you will have a name. Madison looked at the paper and did not touch it yet. Why, she said. Why bring this to me? If your father wins, you inherit 2 houses instead of 1. Suyeon was quiet a moment. When she spoke, her voice had lost the practiced smoothness. Because I have already been married once to a merger. 4 years ago. A different house. A different old man's plan. I was the story that made the board comfortable. When it was done and the shares were his, the husband and I were surplus. She turned one of the pearls at her throat with a thumb. I know what it looks like. A woman made into a decoration for a deal she never agreed to. I saw you in the file. Assistant. 4 years, every contract in the building, with your fingerprints on it, and your name on nothing. She met Madison's eyes. I did not come to save your president. I came because I recognized you, and because the only way to stop my father is to cut the friend out of the house before the announcement. What announcement? He has a date. Soyeon's calm cracked, just at the edges. The friend is moving fast now that you are gone. Within the week, there will be a leak. Something to break your president's footing publicly. So the board panics. So a wedding starts to look like rescue. My father has done this before. First, he ruins the man's standing. Then he offers his daughter as the cure. Her jaw set. I am so tired of being the cure. Madison picked up the paper. She unfolded it. 3 wire records. Dates in spring and summer. A masked destination account. A Macau shell in the sender field. She read the account fragments the way she read everything. From the bottom, from the truth. The last 4 digits of the masked house account matched a routing prefix she had seen 100 times. It was not a foreign account, it was domestic. It was routed through a clearing partner Seoryon used for family disbursements. Family accounts. Contracts, correspondence, and the family accounts. A voice at her own desk yesterday morning, dry and courteous. Your access. His house is in such careful hands. She did not say the name out loud. She had learned, in one brutal day, that a name said too early becomes a weapon in the wrong hand. But it moved through her like cold water, from the base of her skull to her fingertips, and it had a face with thin lips, and a silver-framed stare, and a fountain pen that never stopped turning. She folded the wire records back along their old crease and put them in the zippered pocket, beside the deposit slip with her own 2 words on it. You've changed the shape of it, she said finally. Soo-yeon tilted her head. The shape of what? Yesterday, I thought I was the 3rd person in a story about 2 men and a merger. Madison stood. She smoothed the front of the cream dress with one flat hand, an old gesture, a squaring gesture. I thought I had to choose whether to fight you for him or walk away clean. That's the story he thinks he's in too. A love story with a rival. And now? Now it's a robbery. Madison's voice was level, almost gentle. There is no rival. There is a thief inside the house. And he has been teaching the owner to distrust everything that could catch him. The numbers, the woman who reads them, his own reflex to keep love in the dark. She looked at Soo-yeon. You're not the other woman. You're the alibi they built the theft around. And I'm not the obstacle. I'm the only person left who can read the account. For the first time, Soo-yeon's shoulders came down from around her ears. Something like relief, and under it, something harder. Then you will do it. I'm going to match your half to mine, and give the thief a name I can prove. Madison lifted her bag onto her shoulder. Not a name I feel. A name a board and a prosecutor can't argue with. That takes the account, the clone, and the hand. I have the account now. Because of you. I don't have the other 2 yet. The clone? Madison thought of the log entry. 2:17 in the morning, 3 weeks back, her own credential, opening the folder while she slept in a house she was not supposed to be in. She had wondered for 3 weeks how her badge had walked to the 4th floor without her. She stopped wondering. My credentials opened that folder at 2 in the morning, she said. I was asleep, and I was not in that building. Somebody wore my keys. A short, dry breath that was not a laugh. He told me himself, yesterday, without meaning to. Keys can be taken back. He didn't know how right he was. Somebody already took a copy. Soo-yeon rose too. She held out her hand, not the 2-fingered guard she'd kept on the paper, but her whole hand, open. My father calls me his good daughter, she said. Let me be a bad one for once. Madison looked at the open hand. All day she had offered her own open hand to a man who could not take it because he could not let go of what he was holding. Here was a hand offered back, from the last person in the city she should have trusted, and it cost this woman her whole inheritance to hold it out. She took it. When the leak comes, Madison said, and it will, it'll be about me. He'll use me to break Taejun's footing, because I'm the loose thread, the woman who resigned, the woman who could be painted as anything. He'll make my 4 years look like 4 years of sleeping my way up. She said it without flinching. The way you name a storm you can already smell. When that happens, don't call me. Don't be seen with me. You're my proof that this started on your father's side, and I need you clean, and I need you a secret, until I have the whole chain. Soo-yeon's grip tightened once, then let go. How will I know it's time? You'll know. Madison was already turning toward the light at the front of the library, toward the street and the glass towers she was about to walk back into, with a folded page against her hip. When the whole city thinks I'm finished, that's when I'll be closest. She walked out into the afternoon. She did not go to the car 3 blocks over. She went the other way, toward the towers, toward the 4th-floor archive, and the second half of a name, and the pen that turned and turned somewhere above her, still believing it had counted one less door. Behind her, in the quiet of the periodicals, Han Soo-yeon sat back down and, for the first time in 4 years, let herself breathe, like a woman who was no longer the story someone else was telling. The leak did not wait a week. It came at 6:12 the next morning, while Madison stood barefoot on the tile of her own small kitchen, filling a glass she never drank. Her phone lit on the counter. Then it lit again. Then it stopped being a phone and became a swarm, a low, buzzing thing that walked itself an inch across the granite with each new alert. She set the glass down. She turned the screen over. The first headline had a photograph in it, grainy, long lens, taken from a parked vehicle, a black delivery van. She understood at once, the one that had sat on the corner 3 blocks from his house, morning after morning, while she believed she was invisible. The image showed her in the cream envelope dress, coming through a side door at an hour no employee arrives, her hair loose the way it was never loose at the office. The caption did the work the picture could not. Soo-yeon President's private assistant. 4 years of promotions. 1 address. She read it twice. She had promised herself she would only ever read a thing twice. Her hands were steady. She noticed that with a distant kind of interest, the way you notice weather in another city. Somewhere under the steadiness, a floor was falling away, but her hands had not been told yet. The second story was worse because it was cleaner. No van, no grain, a tidy sidebar of her career laid out like an indictment. Junior coordinator to senior executive assistant to the president in 4 years, salary bands, the Daegu account, which she had, according to the piece, personally handled, a single line of italic near the bottom that she would remember longer than any of it. Sources describe a working relationship that was never only working. She put the phone face down. The tile was cold through her feet, and she made herself feel it. They had not written the truth. They had written something better than the truth, which was a story shaped exactly like one people already wanted. A woman who rose. A woman who could not have risen the honest way, because women like her, in stories like this, never do. 4 years of her own hands on every contract, her name on nothing, and now the nothing had a caption. Her mother's voice did not come. She waited for it, and it did not come, and she understood that some floors you fall through alone. Her phone rang. Not a headline this time, a call. The screen said, Seer-yeon-hur, and she let it ring out because she knew that office was Choi Myung-ho's office, and she was not going to hand him her voice at 6:14 in the morning. It rang again. Same words. She turned the phone all the way off, the way she had turned it over yesterday, the way he turned his photograph face down on the desk. She dressed. Not the cream. She would not give them the cream twice. She chose the bone blazer over the white silk blouse, the pencil skirt, the nude heel, the second work armor, the one that said she still had somewhere to be, even when both of them knew she did not. She braided nothing, hid nothing, drew the black liner up at the outer corner of each eye with a hand that finally, on the second lid, wanted to shake, and did not let it. By the time she reached the street, the city had already decided. She felt it before she read another word. A man at the coffee cart looked at her a half-second too long and then not at all. Two women by the crossing leaned their heads, the specific inch heads lean. A phone came up, angled low against a hip, the lens pointed at her feet, as if her feet were the evidence. She did not slow. She had learned yesterday, on the fire stair, that walking is a thing you can do even when the walking is the only thing left. Her own building, not Sirion, her apartment building, had a doorman who had said good morning to her for 3 years. This morning he studied the brass of the door handle as though he had been hired to guard it, and said nothing, and that was its own headline. She did not go to the towers. She had learned that much too. You do not walk back into the room they built for you and stand where the light was arranged to fall. She walked the other way, toward the same discreet library, and halfway there her phone, back on now because a soldier does not fight blind, showed her the thing that turned the morning from ruin into trap. A follow-up, faster than the first, which meant someone had it ready, which meant someone was feeding a schedule. Access under review, the story reported, with the confidence of a document in hand, that an internal audit had traced the source of the leaked materials. Not gossip, materials, internal photographs, an access log, a scheduling record, proof, the piece said, that the relationship was real and that the proof had been pulled from inside the company by a set of credentials. The credentials belonged to Daniel Choi. She stopped on the sidewalk. A man behind her made a sound and went around. Daniel, CFO Jr., 33, the one who had put 3 fingers on her elbow in the glass corridor, and laughed with her over a forecast that was 12,000 units short. The one Taejun had told to sit down before he cost himself more than she had just cost herself. The story named him without naming him, a mid-level finance officer, but it gave the credential ID, and she knew that ID because she had spent 4 years knowing exactly whose keys opened what. She read the paragraph a 3rd time. She had promised twice. She broke the promise for this, because here was the shape of it, and the shape was beautiful, the way a trap is beautiful. If Daniel leaked it, then there was no conspiracy, only a jealous junior, with a grudge and a login. If Daniel leaked it, then the woman in the van photograph was exactly what the caption said, and the man who might have doubted the caption now had a villain to hate that was not himself. If Daniel leaked it, the only person left standing beside Madison was a suspect, and a suspect is not an ally. A suspect is a second story. She thought of the ghost entry, 2:17 in the morning, 3 weeks ago, her own credential opening the Han folder while she slept in a bed across the city. Somebody wore my keys, and now somebody had worn Daniel's, and dropped them at the scene, still warm. The friend was fast. Soo-yeon had said the friend was fast. She made herself keep walking to the library, inside, the same terminal at the back, the remote credential she had built in year 2, the one no one had revoked because no one remembered it lived. She logged in, and her hands finally did the thing they had wanted to do since the kitchen, so she pressed them flat to the desk until the wood took the shaking and gave it back as stillness. She pulled Daniel's access record for the last 72 hours. And there it was, at 4:40 the previous afternoon, a login from Daniel's credentials, from a terminal on the 4th floor, pulling exactly the 3 files the leak had used. Photographs, log, schedule, clean, sequential, tidy, a confession with a timestamp. Except that at 4:40 the previous afternoon, Madison had been walking out of this very library with Soo-yeon's wire records zipped into her bag, and Daniel, she knew this the way she knew the credential IDs, because Ji-woo gossiped and Madison listened, Daniel had been on a flight. A CFO junior, sent to Busan on the afternoon plane To hold the hand of a supplier no senior would fly for. In the air, phone off, 31,000 feet above a login that his own keys were supposedly typing on the 4th floor. She sat back. She did not have the proof yet. A flight she half remembered from a secretary's chatter was not a thing a board accepts, was not a thing that unbuilds a headline. But she had the crack. The friend had made his first fast mistake, and the mistake was speed. He had used a man who could not have been there, because he had not thought anyone would check where the man was, because in his story, no one checks the alibi of the person they have already agreed to blame. Her phone buzzed on the desk, screen up. She had left it on. Daniel Choi. She looked at the name for 3 rings. Every rule she had made for herself yesterday said do not answer. A suspect is a second story. Soo-yeon must stay invisible, and Daniel, if Daniel was clean, was worth nothing to her clean until she could prove he was clean, and worth everything against her if she was seen taking his call while the city watched her feet. She answered on the 4th ring and said nothing. Madison. His voice was wrong, thin and moving, wind behind it. Madison, I know you're there. I can hear the, please. She waited. I just landed, he said. I turned my phone on and there are 40 messages, and my building's front desk called me a name I'm not going to repeat, and someone from HR left me a voicemail telling me not to come in, and Madison, I swear to you, I have not touched a single file. I was in the air. I was over the water. I know, she said. The wind on his end stopped. She understood he had walked into a jet bridge, into stillness, and that her 2 words had done to him what her hands had refused to do to her all morning. You, his voice cracked, you believe me. I didn't say that. She kept her tone level, the office tone, the tone that had survived the glass corridor. I said I know, those are different. Don't confuse them. It'll cost you. A breath. Okay, he said. Okay, tell me what to do. And this was the hinge, and she felt the whole weight of the morning balance on it. Because everything in her that had learned yesterday's lessons said hang up. He is the trap. Even if he is innocent, being seen with the trap springs it. Choi Myung-ho had built this so that any hand she reached for would burn her, and Daniel's was the nearest, brightest, most obvious hand in the whole design. Which was exactly why the friend had chosen him. Nothing, she said. You do nothing. You don't come to the towers. You don't call a lawyer your family knows, because the friend will know their name before you finish dialing. You don't post 1 word defending yourself, because a defense is a confession the way you'll write it. You go home. You keep every boarding pass, every gate photo, every timestamp your phone made, from the moment you left this city until the moment you turned it back on. You save the Wi-Fi log from the plane if it had Wi-Fi, and you wait. Wait for what? She almost told him. The word ally was in her mouth, and she swallowed it, because ally spoken aloud was a name given early, and names given early become weapons. She had learned that from watching a man in a gray suit spin a fountain pen. For the city to be sure I'm finished, she said. That's when it moves. Madison, he said, and then, smaller, why are you helping me? They're saying it was they're using you should hate me. It's my login on every screen in the country right now. That's why, she said. She hung up before he could answer, because the answer was not for him, it was for her. And she was not ready to say it in a voice a stranger could hear. It was your login, which means it was not you. The friend does not frame the man he actually used. The friend frames the man who is safe to frame, the visible one, the one already standing too close to her in a glass corridor where 10 people watched. Daniel was not the source. Daniel was the second van, parked on a second corner, so that when she went looking she would find him first and stop looking. She would not stop looking. She logged out of the terminal, cleared the search, cleared it again, 2 times, the way she always did now. Then she sat in the quiet of the library, with her hands flat on the dead wood, and let the morning finally arrive in her body all at once. The doorman's brass handle, the phone against a hip, the italic line, 4 years turned into one address, her own name attached to nothing, and now attached to this. Her throat closed, her eyes stung and held. She did not let it fall, and the not letting was its own kind of falling, slow and total, a woman going down through a floor with her back straight. For one breath she let herself feel the whole size of it, alone, fired in everything but the paperwork. Named across a city that had never learned her real name until it needed one to ruin. The one man who might have said a true sentence about her had stood in a corridor and called her a set of keys, and did not yet know that the keys had been copied, and would read this morning's headline, believing it before he believed her. And the only other person who had reached for her was a suspect she had just told to go home and disappear. She thought of the closet. The pale dresses hung beside the black suits, full and shut. A marriage a stranger would read, and no one would ever open. This morning, someone had opened it, had thrown the door wide and photographed what was inside, and told the city it meant she was cheap. A love you have to hide is a love that has already decided what you're worth. She heard it then, her mother, at last, not as comfort, as a bill come due. She had spent 3 months believing she could hold a thing in the dark and keep it clean. The dark had never been hers. The dark belonged to the man who taught Taejun to keep love in it, and this morning, that man had reached into the dark and turned it inside out over her head in front of everyone, and called the result her fault. She wiped under one eye with the side of her thumb, once, careful of the liner. She would not go home. Home had a doorman who guarded a handle. She would not go to the towers. The towers had a corridor with her outline burned into the glass. She took out the bank deposit slip from the zippered pocket, turned it over, read the 2 words she had written on it in the library yesterday, before any of this, when she still had a name that meant merit. 2 words, her whole map, and beside them now she wrote a third, small, in the black pen that was hers and never his. She looked at the 3 words for a long moment. Then she put the slip back in the zipper, stood, and did the only thing rock bottom leaves a person who still has a spine. She started to build the proof. Not the account. She had the account. Soo-yeon had given her the account. Not the clone. She almost had the clone now. A login in the air. A man over the water. What she needed was the hand, the name she had not said out loud, would not say out loud, could not afford to say, until the paper said it for her. She needed to walk the credential backward from the 4th floor terminal that Daniel's keys had supposedly typed on, while Daniel breathed recycled air at 31,000 feet, and find whose fingers had actually been in the building at 4:40, and match that to a shell in Macau, and match the shell to a friend. She would need to get inside the towers to do it. Into the 4th floor archive, in a body the whole building now had a photograph of. Past a doorman of a different kind, past 10 people who had watched her called a set of keys, past a gray suit that spun a pen and thought her a door already closed. She checked the time on the dead-faced phone. 8:47. The archive opened at 9. The morning shift would be reading the headline about her at their desks, with their coffee going cold, deciding what she was. Madison Carter picked up her bag, squared it on her shoulder, and walked toward the towers she had been fired from in every way but one, into a building that believed she was finished, to prove she was the only person left who could still read the account. The glass doors of the library sighed shut behind her. Ahead, 3 blocks off, the Sirion Towers threw their morning shadow across the street, and she walked straight into it without slowing, the way she had walked the whole glass corridor, with her heels level and her eyes on no one, because she had finally understood the one thing the friend had never counted on. He had made her nothing, and nothing has nowhere left to fall, and nothing has nothing left to lose, and nothing can walk right through a front door no one is watching anymore, because everyone has already decided there is nothing there to see. The archive on the 4th floor smelled of toner and cold paper. Madison sat at the corner terminal at 9:09, her remote credential open, the whole city behind her convinced she was finished. She started with the one thing the friend had made too fast. Daniel's login. Yesterday, 1640. This floor, 3 files pulled clean. She did not reopen the record to feel it again. She opened it to break it. Every terminal on the 4th floor stamped a hardware ID into the session header. Nobody read that field. It sat under the timestamp like a serial number on the back of a chair. Madison read it. The login that pulled the leak files carried the hardware ID of Station 7, the terminal against the far wall, the one nearest the legal reading room. Daniel's badge had never touched Station 7 in 4 years of records. His work sat on the 12th floor, finance, a different wing entirely. Yet his credential had, apparently, walked down 4 floors, crossed a room he had no reason to enter, sat at a machine he'd never used, and pulled 3 files in 90 seconds while its owner was 31,000 feet over the sea with his phone dark. She pulled the session tokens next. A badge login and a cloned login look identical on the surface. Underneath, they don't. A real badge writes a rolling counter, a number that climbs by 1 each time the card is physically read at a door. A clone copies a snapshot of the credential and freezes that counter where it was stolen. Daniel's leak login carried a counter 3 lower than his morning coffee run swipe from 2 days before. The card had gone backward in time. No card does that. Only a copy does that. Madison sat still for a moment. Then she wrote 1 line on the deposit slip from her zippered pocket, under the 3 words already there, and kept working. She needed the hand. The clone proved a copy existed. It did not say who wore it. She went back to Station 7's own session history, not the badge that logged in, but the machine itself, and asked a duller question. Who had physically sat at Station 7 in the 90 seconds around 1640? The building's own after-hours motion index answered. To reach Station 7, you crossed a corridor with a single ceiling sensor that logged nothing but a heartbeat, a count, a body present or not present. At 1638, 1 body entered the reading room corridor. At 1642, it left. In between, Daniel's stolen credential opened the leak. 1 body. She needed its name, and the sensor gave her none. So she stopped chasing the hand at the machine, and chased the money instead, because a hand that clones a card for a foreign patriarch does not do it for love. She spread Suyon's 3-wire records beside the archive's own family disbursement ledger, the domestic clearing partner Seoryeon used to pay pensions and school fees, and the small, quiet accounts of the founder's line. The masked destination account from Macau ended in 4 digits. She'd matched those digits to a family routing prefix already in the library days ago. Now she had the ledger that sat on the other side of that prefix. She walked it forward. The routing prefix fed a pooled sub-account. The pooled sub-account paid out, quarterly, to a short list of retainers, men the family kept on stipend for discretion rather than title. 1 line on that list drew a stipend that had tripled in the spring. Same spring the merger died on paper. Same spring the first Macau wire cleared. The name on the line was Choi Myung-ho. Madison did not react the way she'd once imagined she would. She read it twice, the way she read everything, and put the ledger page beside the wire record so the 2 halves touched. Han Dae-sung's money in from Macau, the family's money out to the friend. The account in the middle wore both their fingerprints and one man's name. She had the account. She had the clone, now she had the hand. There was one more file she'd never opened, and it was not in the Han folder. It sat in the oldest disbursement archive, the sealed founder's block, 12 years deep, and her remote credential shouldn't have reached it. The credential she built in year 2 reached everything nobody remembered to lock. This block, nobody remembered. She opened it because of a sentence Taejun would not explain. Somebody taught you to love in the dark. She'd let it go 3 times. She didn't let it go now. The founder's block held the legal correspondence from the year Taejun turned 23, the year his parents split, the year the company always described as the year his father chose the business. Madison read from the bottom. A retainer's memo, unsigned but for gray initials, the same deniable initials from the merger memo. It advised the young heir's father that his wife's family was leveraging the marriage to move against the house, that affection had become an exposure, that the marriage was the door through which a rival would enter. None of it was true. The rival never existed. The threat was drafted, the evidence assembled from nothing, the fear installed like a lock. The father, frightened for the company, pushed the mother out to seal the door, and the boy learned, at 23, watching, that a love anyone could see was a blade someone would use. The memo was initialed CMH. Choi Myung-ho had not merely sold Taejun to Han Dae-sung this spring. 12 years ago he had built the wound that made the selling possible. He taught the boy to keep love in a closet, and then, this year, he used the closet as the crack to pry the house apart. The secret had been in plain sight the whole time. It had been sitting at the head of the reading room, turning a fountain pen, calling the house well-kept hands. Madison copied nothing to paper. She built one file, sealed, and sent it to 3 places at once, so no single hand could catch it. To Suyeon, the origin half. To Daniel's guarded evidence of the flight, the alibi half. And to a 4th address she'd held in reserve since the library, the one written in the 2 first words on the deposit slip. The 2 words were a prosecutor's name. She looked at the slip a last time. The prosecutor's name, then the 3rd word she'd added at the bottom of the well, then the line she'd written this morning. The 3rd word was Taejun. The last line was 1 word, front. She turned her phone back on. It filled with the same drowning noise as the day before. She let it drown. Then she called the one number she had refused to call since the elevator. He answered on the first ring, which told her he'd been holding the phone. Madison. "Come down to the 4th floor," she said. "Bring nobody." Taejun came alone. He crossed the archive between the shelves and stopped where he could see the screen and the 2 touching pages and her face. He looked at her the way a man looks at a thing he was told had been destroyed. "They're saying you." "I know what they're saying." She turned the screen. "Read the bottom first. That's how it's ordered." He read. She watched the reading move through him, the merger memo, the family ledger, the tripled stipend, the name. His jaw set once, hard, the way it had set in his office when she'd said somebody taught him. Then he reached the founder's block. The initials, the year he turned 23. His hand went flat on the desk and stayed there, and this time she did not read fury in it. She read a man finding out the shape of his own life was drawn by another hand. "He held my mother's face in his hands the day she left," Taejun said. His voice had gone very level. "He told me she'd chosen to go. He told me love was the leak. He's said it to me every year since, in different words. He needed you afraid of the one thing that couldn't be bought," Madison said. "A man who loves in the light can't be sold a rescue. So he made sure you'd never risk the light." Taejun looked at the screen, then at her, and something in his face that had been braced for 4 years let go. The wedding, he said, was never a wedding. It's the story your fear made believable. She closed the file. The Han Dae-sung doesn't want his daughter married to you. He wants you ruined enough that a merger looks like relief. Choi built the ruin, from inside, using my keys and Daniel's. Daniel was in the air. 31,000 feet. I have the flight. Soo-yeon has the origin. A prosecutor has both, sent 9 minutes ago. She stood. You don't have a decision to make about me anymore, Taejun. That one's already made, and it's yours. You have a decision to make about him, and it costs. He understood the cost. Choi Myung-ho's fingerprints ran through a decade of the family's quiet accounts. Handing him to the state meant opening those accounts. It meant the house bleeding in public, contracts frozen, the board in open war, part of the empire gone. The clean version was to bury the friend quietly, keep the accounts sealed, let the leak stand, let her stay finished, and marry the story away. Taejun looked at the sealed founder's block one more time. Then he took out his phone and called the board secretary and said, in front of her, open the family disbursement accounts to independent audit, all of them, today. He paused. And get me the prosecutor's office. Choi Myung-ho's counsel. Not ours. His. He hung up. He'd just cut into his own house to reach the man inside it. There's the other half, Madison said. The audit isn't only his, it's mine. I know. 4 years read as one address in every paper in this city. You don't undo that with a statement. You undo it with a ledger nobody can accuse of loving me. She held his eye. Every promotion I ever got, opened. Every account I touched, checked by people who've never heard my name. If it survives that, it's mine. If it doesn't, I never wanted it. It'll survive, he said. Then, let it be checked anyway. That's the point. Not that you believe me, that you make it so belief isn't required. Choi Myung-ho was in the small reading room when they came for him, at the head of the table, the fountain pen turning between 2 fingers. He did not stand. He looked at Madison over the thin silver frames and inclined his head, courteous, the way he had by the elevators, as though she'd merely arrived early again. Careful hands, he said. I did say. You did, Madison answered. You just never said whose. He set the pen down. That was the only thing that changed in him, the pen going still on the table. 2 people from the prosecutor's office stood in the doorway. Taejun stood beside her, and he said the sentence he had refused to say in 12 years, the true one, out loud, in a room with other ears in it. You taught me my mother left because love was weak, Taejun said. You wrote it. You've been reading it back to me ever since. It's the only thing you ever gave me, and it was a lie you built to move money. Choi's thin mouth moved, not quite a smile. Everything I built kept this house standing. No, Taejun said. It kept it afraid. There's a difference. She taught me the difference in 4 days. They took him out through the front of the floor, not the service corridor, past the desks that had spent 2 days rewriting Madison into a woman who'd slept her way up. Ji-woo stood at her station and watched the man who'd routed every cruelty through her floor walk out in the daylight, and she looked at Madison, and Madison gave her the same small, steadying gesture she'd given her the day of the letter. The audits ran for 11 days. Madison did not hide during them. She came in the front door each morning in the bone blazer or the cream envelope, whichever she chose, and let strangers with clipboards trace 4 years of her work back to its root. Every band, every raise, every account. Daegu, opened, showed the plant twice, showed the 12,000 units inserted, and corrected by a hand that was never hers. Her promotions traced to memos she'd drafted and merit she'd earned before anyone knew whose bed the papers imagined. Han Soo-yeon walked in on the 4th day, in marine wool and pearls. and stood beside Madison in the lobby, where the whole floor could see them together. And that was the alliance made visible at last. The daughter of the man who'd tried to eat the house, standing next to the woman he'd tried to erase. She did not have to say anything. Her being seen said it. Her father's story required her silence and her absence, and she gave the room her presence instead. And the merger as rescue died the way a lie dies, without a sound, when the one person it needed refuses to play the part. Daniel Choi was cleared in a line at the bottom of a page most people didn't read, which was its own small cruelty, but Madison made sure the line existed and made sure his name sat above it, and when he came back to the 12th floor, she told him the difference between "I know" and "I believe you had been settled," and it was the second one now, and he could stop carrying the boarding pass in his wallet. On the 12th day, they announced it. Not a wedding, an office. Madison Carter, taking an independent executive seat, her own line, her own authority, answerable to the board, and not to the man whose house she'd slept in. She'd said the terms once, and she said them again, where the lawyers wrote them down. Never hidden, her career never used as a blade, by anyone, in either direction. Any decision about her safety, made with her, not for her. She would begin again, but only in the light, and only under rules a person could read. Taejun agreed to all of it, in writing, in the light, at cost. The house was smaller now. The accounts were open. Part of the empire was gone into evidence and audit and the slow machinery of the state. He'd chosen, and everyone could see what the choosing had cost him, which was the only kind of choosing she'd ever asked for. That evening, he turned the photograph on his desk, face up for the first time. It was his mother, young, laughing at something outside the frame. He'd kept it turned down for 12 years, because a man taught him a face that could be loved was a face that could be used. He turned it up and left it up. The last thing was the simplest. They left together at the end of the day, not by the service door, not 3 blocks apart, not one of them slipping out at 6:40 while the other pretended to sleep. They walked out the front of the building, through the lobby, past the desk, into the last of the light, and everyone saw. Madison wore the wine-dark dress, gold at the heel, her hair loose. Taejun walked beside her in black, the dragon at his collar in plain view, and he reached for her hand in the open, where the whole street could watch him do it. She thought of her mother's message, the one she'd programmed to arrive on the day she finally decided. A love you have to hide is a love that has already decided what you're worth. She let it come once, and then she let it go, because it had done its work, and it was finished, and this was not that. He took her hand, and in front of all of them, in the light, with the house watching and the city watching, and nothing left in a closet to guard, he did not let go. If you want to watch all the stories without any ads and also get access to bonus scenes, extended epilogues, and exclusive spicy chapters, head over to our Patreon. Scan the QR code on the screen. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment. See you there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever built your worth on merit, only to watch someone reduce you to just the assistant in front of a room? Have you ever loved someone who kept you behind closed doors and had to decide whether staying was love or erasure? And when the truth about who was really betraying you finally surfaced, did you have the courage to walk out the front door with your head high? Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, truth, and love, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.